Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins, and today I'm talking to author James Peters about Payment to Petition, Book 2 in the Cold Cosmos series. Idiom Lee is a man alone, millions of miles from home. A chance encounter with an alien shapeshifter sent him into a cold cosmos devoid of humanity. After the events of Book 1, he's established himself in the lowest bar on the moving asteroid Pandarus, gambling and serving as a bouncer, until a sloth cat creature he calls Slowhand appears and tells him Jin is in trouble. Hi James, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming back on Book Talk Radio Club.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
James, would you like to give Book Talk Radio Club's listeners a brief synopsis of Last Night on Earth, Cold Cosmos Book 1, please, so we can understand the events leading up to Book 2?
Absolutely. In Book 1, we joined Idiom Lee on a solo ride on his horse, Leroy, through the wilderness of Colorado in 1895. A chance encounter with a bear-like creature began his odyssey. As it turns out, that creature is actually a shape-shifting alien that he calls Jen. She's a skinwalker, kind of like a werewolf, but a bear. Together, they escaped Earth and made it to a hollowed-out asteroid, spacefaring rock, as we call it, Pandarus. Idiom was seriously injured, though, before he left Earth. In fact, he was almost dead, or mostly dead, as you might call it. Now he finds himself healed, but deeply in debt. One thing led to another, and he and the rest of the crew sign on to recover a valuable spear of Element Zero to pay off their debts. They are joined on this mission by Faye, who is a Grinken princess who Idiom really doesn't trust. Once they recovered the Element Zero, Idiom made a switch. He switched out the Element Zero sphere for a worthless replacement, which has actually got kind of a funny origin story. Of course, Faye does double-cross them all, and only Idiom and Jetko, the big rhino guy, know this. At the end of Book 1, Idiom proposes to the rest of the crew that they should stick together. They're stronger together. You know, they should work as a team. But they all laughed at him and go their separate ways.
Why the name Idiom Lee, and what kind of man is he? Tell me about his character.
Okay. Well, the name came to me years ago before I even had a plot remotely worked out for this story. I wanted a hero with an easy-to-say and remember name along the lines of an Indiana Jones or a Flash Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Idiom Lee sounded like the name of a cowboy from the Old West. So I considered writing a standard Western as this character being my hero.
Mm.
Well, that quickly turned into science fiction because, well, that's what I do and that's what I love. Idiom is a reluctant hero. He does try to do the right thing as he sees it. He's not above cheating at cards, though, because he kind of figures the gambling money ain't got no home anyway. You could trust him, though. If you left your wallet on the table, it would be left alone and all your money would be there. But if you're gambling, he'll cheat. He'll try to solve his problems with words first, but when push comes to shove, he'll use his twin Colt 45s to end a conflict with deadly efficiency.
So why the title Payment to Petition?
Okay. In Book 1, the crew had a run-in toward the end of that book with some Lugolons. These are giant grasshopper-like aliens. They were the ones who ended up thinking they had gotten away with the Element Zero sphere. Their queen ship, that ship's name translates into perdition in English. Mm-hmm. Book 2 begins with Idiom learning that Jen and Faye have been captured and are being held on this ship, and the queen is demanding the Element Zero as payment in exchange for their release.
In Payment to Petition, Idiom Lee is pulled into another adventure to save Jin, the skin shifter who took him from Earth. Who is Jin? I know what a shapeshifter is, but what is a skin shifter?
Well, in their first book, there's a Cherokee tracker that is after them. They're after Idiom and Jen, and he tells him she's actually a skinwalker. And in American Indian legend, they have stories of these creatures that are kind of like werewolves or werebears, that are able to transform from human to animal form as well as having some mind influence, a little bit of mind control capabilities. They can convince people with cunning and with charisma to do things they might not normally do. But instead of being supernatural, it turns out that Jen is this alien creature, and she has to turn into a beast on a regular basis to feed.
Ah, right. So here we have Idiom. He's now established himself in the lowest bar on the moving asteroid Panadaris, gambling and serving as a bouncer. What an imagination you have, James. Paint a picture with words of Pandaris and this bar.
Okay. Well, Panadaris is a moving asteroid, as we mentioned earlier. It's large. It's capable of traveling between the different systems in the galaxy. It does long-distance jumps or long-distance null space conduits, as we call it in this system. But to describe the bar, I'd say you'd have to start with the cantina scene in Star Wars. There's quite a variety of wild aliens, all looking for whatever mind-altering chemicals their body needs. The bartender there is a kind of a frog-faced fellow, and he sometimes accepts oddities or the unusual trinket in exchange for drinks.
Right.
This bar in particular, though, is on the very bottom level of the common areas on Panadaris. The upper areas are controlled by the Migrant, who are the military bird-like creatures that basically run things in this galaxy. The lower areas are the lesser species, so to speak.
Right.
This is the area. This bar is basically the first thing you go into when you leave the mines, the lower levels of the asteroid, and enter the upper, more common areas. So it's basically a mining bar, and it's dirty. Fights are common. But the Idiom, actually, other than the aliens there, it's not that different from a rough Western bar. You know?
I've interviewed many authors of all genres of fiction, and they say they have found that the characters of their books become very real to them and start telling the author their stories. Is Idiom doing this now with you?
Absolutely, especially in book 2. In book 1, I got to know my characters as friends in my mind, and you'll probably say, okay, this is psychotic or whatever, but they do have their distinct voices. And once I get to the part, especially writing book 2, I can just write the plot outline of what they have to do, where they have to go, etc. And the characters actually end up telling the story with their reactions and arguments and their own motivations. Sometimes I try to get one of them to do something in particular, and it's not in their character, so it doesn't happen. So as an author, I have to find a way to either force their hand to do something, or maybe it's another character that is, it's more within their wheelhouse of doing something. They say, we have to do this. And that's when it gets to be really fun as an author, is when your characters are arguing with you as the creator, and they take it in a better direction than I ever dreamt of.
It must be very busy in your head.
Oh yeah, it's very busy. Yeah, it's a crowded place.
Who would enjoy the Cold Cosmos books? What audience are they aimed at?
Well, I would say anybody that likes a science fiction adventure that's complete with a solid dose of humor, it's for you. If you enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy, Farscape, Firefly, the old Buck Rogers series, those type of adventures, you'd like this. If you like stories about the underdog team of misfits that are just scraping by and arguing all along the way, you'd enjoy this series.
Cold Cosmos books are in the space opera and science fiction western genres. What is space opera and what is a science fiction western?
All right. Well, space opera to me is a genre where our heroes have the capability to, with relative ease, bypass the speed of light and travel between the various alien worlds.
Oh, sorry. Just hang on a second, James. Henry, sorry, the dog's barking at the thunder. You can't join an interview, Henry. Stop talking. Sorry, carry on. Shush. Let me just put him outside. Sorry, come here. Well, that was unintentional. Come here. Come here.
Let me know when you're ready, and I'll go back to the beginning.
Out. There we go. Such a troublemaker. Please carry on. I do apologise.
No problem. I'll start back at the beginning of that section.
Yeah, go on.
All right. Space opera to me is a genre where our heroes have, with relative ease, the capability to transport themselves between various alien worlds, outposts, satellites, etc. In the Cold Cosmos universe, I've used a system that's called a null space conduit. But in all honesty, that could have been hyperdrive, warp drive, warp speed, whatever. Space opera isn't really that interested in the science behind it. We have a method to get there. Right. We have rules in place that get us there, and it's just accepted that they can go faster than light.
Right.
Science fiction western, though, uses the story elements of the westerns, the old westerns we used to watch. Typically a drifter or a band of them moving from one town to another, either causing trouble or solving problems, in their travels. Oftentimes, those science fiction westerns don't use aliens. They just use humans. But not always. There's a lot of overlap, and I feel like this series fits both categories, but there are definitely the aliens in this one. So if I had to pick one or the other, I'd say it's probably more space opera, but there's definitely Western elements in it.
So now you've written and published book 2, how many will there be in the Cold Cosmos series?
Well, it's a great question. In my head, I view this as an ongoing TV series where we could have multiple seasons, 4 or 5 seasons of adventures. I have a 10-story arc that I'm working on to resolve the initial, what I call the initial threat. It's the crystal threat that is hinted at in book 1, and in book 2, the reader learns more about that. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg on that crystal threat, though. This series could go on indefinitely, but I do expect to resolve that crystal threat by the end of book 10.
Good Lord.
I know, it's a lot going on in my head.
Last Night on Earth is available for Kindle and in paperback, as well as audiobook. Do you intend to publish payment of edition for audio as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is currently in production.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the way that Audible is set up, we have to have an Amazon entity before I can get the work started on Audible. So I have to have a paperback or an ebook on Amazon in order for Audible to recognize it as a viable title to start the work.
I see. Did you narrate Last Night on Earth or hire a narrator?
Well, I'm a firm believer in doing what you do best and hiring experts for the rest. So I've contracted with the awesome voice actor David Swanson. He is acting and producing the audiobook. He also did the first book, so we'll have the continuity of character voices, and he is truly one of the best voices in the business.
Was there one particular book in either space opera or sci-fi western that gave you a eureka moment and decided to start writing the Cold Cosmos series?
Well, I would say my eureka moments come from my dreams, because I have some very wild ones, and I write a lot of my stories based upon the dreams. This story began with a dream that was kind of a nightmare. It was an encounter with a monster alone in the woods, and it seemed to change from the creature to a woman. That idea started me down the rabbit hole that became Cold Cosmos.
Wow. You fell in love with science fiction at a young age, becoming hooked on the works of Asimov, Anderson and Poe. While in grade school, you were given an assignment to write a journal about anything you wanted and discovered your passion for writing. So what did you write about?
Well, I did a total Buck Rogers ripoff. At that time, Buck Rogers was big on TV, as well as Battlestar Galactica, the original series. And my character was a pilot of a spaceship. He was fighting some bad guys set to attack Earth. Spent the majority of the writing on that journal trying to describe a big, massive space battle. And that has definitely changed over the years. Now I focus more on the dialogue and the reactions of the characters than to try to write big, massive space battles. After a certain extent, you can only describe pew-pewing lasers and things blowing up so many ways. So the reaction and the characters are what I try to focus on now.
You've also written and published the Black Swan Planet series, which is an over-the-top and in-your-face hilarious romp through the galaxy. How does this series differ from the Cold Cosmos series?
Well, Black Swan Planet is an R-rated comedy romp, along the lines of something you'd see like in Deadpool or some teen comedies.
Got you.
It has a chimpanzee in a spacesuit smoking a blunt on the cover, so it has that going for it. It truly has many laugh-out-loud moments.
Right.
And it's very embarrassing humor for our hero. Basically, if anything bad, embarrassing, or hurtful could happen, it happens to my main character in that series. I don't hold back on the crude humor in that series,
Right.
and it could be offensive to some. If that type of stuff offends you, potty humor or whatever, just stay away from Black Swan Planet. Cold Cosmos, on the other hand, is more of a PG story.
Right.
There's no F-bombs in it. An occasional curse word, like, minor, but not F-bombs. It's much more suitable for a wider audience.
Right.
I would hand Cold Cosmos over to a 12-year-old to read if they like science fiction. They'd still laugh at it. There's still lots of laugh out loud moments, but I probably wouldn't get an angry call from their parents on that series.
I love the first review you've received for Payment to Petition. I'm going to read this. This action-packed space story has a prickly camaraderie amongst a band of aliens. Idiom, the sole human, has adjusted to galactic life. Now he's pulled into another adventure to save Jin, the skin shifter, who took him from Earth. I love the humour. He was as confused as an Irishman in a dry county. That just tickled me. The world building is creative, the characters are strong, and there are abundant plot twists. Cold Cosmos 2 is even better than the first book of the series. This would make an excellent animated movie. Fantastic review. Lastly, James, where can Book Talk Radio Club's listeners purchase the Cold Cosmos series?
Well, it's for sale through Amazon in paperback and ebook, and of course the Audible version of it is going to be coming soon. Really, the simplest thing to do though is to go to your search bar, whether it's Google or Bing or whatever, and just type in the two words Cold Cosmos. It's going to pop up with reviews. It's going to pop up with links to the Amazon site, and you can find it from there.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you, James. That was great. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club again. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. And apologies once again for my dog interrupting the interview.
That's all right. I'm surprised it wasn't my cat up here making noises.
Thanks, James.
Hey, no problem.